everyone, I'm Angela.
And I am Hoon, and together we are Kaleidowork, a coaching and consulting company dedicated to support leaders and teams to find a better way of working together. And today we're here to talk about feedback.
Feedback, juicy word.
Yeah. So we get a lot of requests from leaders who want training or coaching to help them give more effective feedback. Or sometimes they want some help with how do I help my team become more receptive to constructive criticism? And it kind of just made me start thinking about my own experience with feedback. Some of them are so much easier to hear, and I don't mean positive one. Of course, positive ones are always lovely to get.
I'll always welcome that.
But some constructive or critical feedback are easier to hear, and others are a lot harder to actually take in. So I started to wonder why. What about your experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of us have a story or two or 10 of times that we've heard feedback that didn't land well for us. I remember very early on having a feedback experience that felt kind of awful, actually. It was early in my career, and the leader of this organization that I was working with gave me feedback actually about my appearance at work. So this was somebody who came from a very tough, primarily male-dominated industry, and so at the time had to kind of conform to that, and understandably so. That was kind of how things were early on in her career. When we started working together, I came in as a young female professional. I was dressing in a way that I loved. I had cute button-up tops, I had curly hair, wore jewelry and cute shoes, and she gave me feedback that I needed to change the way that I was dressing because it was reinforcing the fact that I was a young woman, and that it might make clients not take me so seriously. That was really, really hard to hear. Didn't land well, that's for sure. Yeah.
Why do you think it was hard to hear?
Yeah, I felt conflicted because this was coming from somebody who was my boss and someone who had many more years of experience working than I did, and also a bit of a role model to me. So on the one hand, I thought this is feedback that I should follow. It's coming from a source that I'm supposed to trust and learn from. But at the same time, I felt very put off by it because I felt like it wasn't coming from a place of improving me, actually. I wasn't seeing any challenges of connecting with the clients I was working with at the time. If someone was complaining or if I was having a really hard time building relationships, then yeah, that might have been helpful. But at the time, it actually felt more like unsolicited advice.
Yeah, that is an important difference, right? This instant did not sound like feedback. It sounded like maybe sharing of experience. Maybe that's what she wanted to do, but it's just strange that there wasn't a problem. Sometimes when I'm coaching leaders, a lot of time they're actually not clear on what is the core issue. What is the improvement that they wanted to see? They tend to come from a place of wanting to control somebody's behavior or somebody's ways of doing things without thinking about the impact. What is the difference in the impact that you wanted to see, and allowing the person to approach it from their way?
Right, exactly, because there are so many different ways to work, to get things done, and we all have our different styles. Maybe the litmus test is my feedback meant to create conformity? Right? I have my own belief about how we're supposed to show up for work, how we're supposed to communicate, how we're supposed to do the things. And I want this person to do it the same. If you're in that conformity realm, it might actually be falling in that unsolicited advice.
There's something else that you said about this example that made me think about what makes feedback land or not land, which is whether you trust or respect a person. So in this way, you actually wanted to listen to the feedback because you trust her, you respect her experience and her opinion. Where you feel torn is what is this feedback about? But I think sometime in other places, the feedback is actually sound, but it couldn't land because there isn't a foundation of respect. So if I don't respect you, I don't respect your opinion, I'm not going to respect your evaluation of me. Or if I don't trust you, or I don't trust that you have my best interest at heart, I want to be questioning, why are you sharing this with me, right? So I think that foundation of what is the relationship that you have, how strong is that relationship, how can you strengthen that first before you go to a place of giving feedback is important.
Yeah, it's a message that we share with new leaders in particular. Sometimes if you're taking on a new team or you're in a new leadership position, you might have come in already with some ideas of, where improvements could be made. But if you don't allow time for the relationship to be established, then you don't have that foundation of trust built, and the receptivity of it might not be as positive as you hope for. I remember having a conversation with a leader who took on a new team, and probably within the first couple of weeks, he'd already observed a few things, but he really didn't want to give that feedback until he had done a little bit more listening, a little bit more learning. So he prioritized the relationship building first. Meanwhile, was gathering a lot of information that would help feed into good feedback. But took the time to establish that foundation first, and then offered the feedback, which increases the likelihood that the person receiving it is going to be more receptive.
Yeah. And this connected kind of the next reason why I don't think sometimes feedback land, which is when the feedback don't align with how the person see themselves. When I have received critical feedback in the past, if it's something I'm already aware of myself, I can take that feedback in quite easily. It's easy to hear because it aligns with how I see myself. But if the feedback is very contradictory or almost like the opposite of how I see myself, what I think I'm good at, that can be really tricky to hear. And the connection that I see with the story that you share is, if you as a leader take a little bit of time to get to know the people that you're with and to start to understand how they see themselves, what they take a lot of pride in, and then you can kind of start your feedback by affirming the things that you see and the things that you can appreciate about them, the things that they are always trying to be, then deliver your feedback based on that, it could land so much better.
There's actually a really great analogy I've heard, and this was from a company that I was coached by very early in my career called the Roy Group. And they have this analogy of a cup. So if you think about a full cup as representative of the person who's about to receive feedback, imagine trying to pour more water into that cup. It's going to overflow and they can't possibly take in anything, right? So a really great way to understand and learn how your team view themselves is to allow them to empty their cup first, which means invite them to self-reflect on whatever area that you want to provide feedback on. Allow them to share with you how they feel that went or how they think they've performed in this certain area. Use that to give you information about how they identify. Maybe they're actually on the exact same page as you, and that makes it quite easy.
When I reflect on my past experience receiving feedback, another reason why some feedback is hard to hear is when it feels unfair. Not everybody is held to the same standard. So I might have observed somebody doing something that I thought was similar to what I was doing, yet here I am receiving critical feedback about how I need to change that, even though it seems like it was acceptable for someone else. Sometimes on teams, we have implicit agreement. We each have our own ways of working, and sometimes that person is allowed to do things a certain way because it has worked for them. They've been here for a long time. They're about to retire, and we're not going to change that. But you're somebody new, you're coming in. I see you as an opportunity to kind of shift the culture or shift the ways of us doing things. So I'm going to hold you to a slightly different standard. And it's not coming from a malicious place, but the effect of it feels very unfair. So I think it would be very helpful as a team to have explicit agreement. What is our standard of excellence? What does it look like to do this work really well? How are we holding each other accountable to this?
Yeah, and another way that feedback can feel kind of unfair is when you feel unappreciated, right? So when you feel like you're only ever getting negative feedback and a whole bunch of the great and positive ways that you're working are going unrecognized or unappreciated. I think that that can really put a wall up, especially if you've come through a really tough project. And yeah, of course, there are things that could have gone better, but there are also things that went well. And I am a personal fan of a feedback model that considers all of it, what has gone well, what's challenging. So, as a leader, I think it's important to make sure that you're communicating the things you appreciate about your team on a regular basis, and also provide feedback to support growth and improvement as well.
Yeah, I find leaders tend to lean too heavily on one side or the other, right? So some leader is so good at being affirming and providing motivation and reinforcement for the things that people are doing well, and neglecting sharing any negative or critical feedback. Or the other side is that leaders who they tend to be, if they're very process oriented or they're very focused on the work and they're not a touchy-feely kind of person, they tend to just focus so much on what's going wrong because they have this very improvement focus orientation. And so any effort that is doing well to them is taken for granted. You're just doing your job. Why do I need to tell you anything about that? It's a non-starter. There's no conversation there. So I think it's about balancing that, right? So if somebody is doing well 80% of the time in their job, they should hear 80% of the time from you what's going well and what you appreciate about them. The ratio of what conversation you have with them should match their level of performance, for sure. Yeah. So we hope that helps you start thinking about why some of the feedback you've given so far didn't quite land and what you can do differently. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and we'll see you in the next video.